This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And I am Jim Waters, welcoming you into this Tuesday edition of Kentucky's Voice, where we're streaming live on the radio on 970 WGTK and on major social media platforms, as we do each weekday from 11 a.m. to noon. We appreciate you making this part of your day, and we hope that you'll share this and let other people know about this show, especially if they're concerned about having a conservative voice in the media. And that's what we're about here, Kentucky's Voice. You can watch us on TV then at 12:30, 4 and 8 on Channel 21, WBNA. What is Kentucky's Voice? Well, this is filling a void. Filling a void by offering coverage and analysis of today's news from a conservative, common sense, Christian-based point of view. And you're always going to get that here. So you always know what you're going to get here. And that's what we want, consistent coverage of news, what's happening in the world, in Kentucky in particular, and how Kentucky is affected by that. By the way, if you have ideas for a story, you want to hear us interview somebody, let us know on our Kentucky's Voice text line. And that's one way you can partner with us, is by letting us know your comments and also through your contributions. You can text your comments to the number there on the screen, or if you're listening by radio, 502-571-0970, or you can text a one-time or monthly gift to KY Voice by texting KY Voice to 53555 in order to contribute to this program. And this is a listener-supported program. It's a nonprofit or a project, and so we need you to partner with us, not just financially, but also through your comments, 502-571-0970. And comments that I get here, especially early on in the show, we'll definitely get it on today. And if we need to, we'll get some on tomorrow. But folks, you know, we have a unique opportunity to build a media powerhouse here that's needed in Kentucky. And after all, what other media do you know of here in our community that will always be reporting on news from a conservative Christian common sense point of view? And while you might not think this is needed right now, or that it's that important, you may think differently about this before it's over. Conservatives tend to do that. They tend to wait until things turn left before acting. Right now, conservative populism is on the rise, but there will come a time when the pendulum will swing back the other way. When that happens, what you do today, what you give today, what you invest today will make it possible to have this strong conservative voice that cannot be silenced by an Andy Beshear executive order. So once again, I invite you to partner with us today. This is an entirely listener-supported show. It's very simple to do that. Text KY Voice to 53555. Also, text us your thoughts about the show and any of the issues we discuss, or story ideas that you have, things you would like to hear. We'd like to hear from you about that as well, 502-571-0970. Now, we talk a lot about politics, policy, and issues on this show, but today we've got a special treat coming up today on the show. We have a very special guest joining us. We have a rising boxing star from right here at Radcliffe, Kentucky, Price Sparrow, and his trainer, who also happens to be his father right now. Anyhow, Kelvin Sparrow, they'll join us from Radcliffe and later on in the show today. But first, look at some developments in the news. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, the renowned civil rights activist, Baptist minister, political trailblazer, has passed away this morning at the age of 84. According to statements from his family, Reverend Jackson died peacefully at his home in Chicago, surrounded by loved ones following a prolonged battle with a progressive supranuclear palsy. It's a rare neurological disorder akin to Parkinson's disease that he was diagnosed with late last year. Jackson had been hospitalized in November due to complications from the illness, which progressively affected his mobility and speech. Though he remained engaged in public life until recently, his passing marks the end of an era for one of America's most enduring voices in the fight for racial justice and equality. We'll have some responses from those on both sides of the aisle when we come back. Right here on Kentucky's Voice, thinking today, thoughts and prayers for Reverend Jackson and his family today on Kentucky's Voice. Stay with us.
Online at kyvoice.org.
Reverend Jesse Jackson, who led the civil rights movement for decades after Dr. Martin Luther King, has passed away at 84 years old. Tributes poured in immediately after the announcement, with political leaders, celebrities, civil rights organizations honoring his contributions. President Trump called him a towering icon whose moral vision reshaped America. And extended condolences to his family. On social media platforms like X, users have shared memories and condolences, highlighting how Jackson's activism opened doors for underrepresented communities, how he influenced the hip-hop culture and beyond. His death has sparked reflections on the evolution of civil rights in the U.S., underscoring the ongoing relevance of his lifelong pursuit of justice. On the conservative side of the aisle, as we mentioned, President Trump, he said he knew him well long before becoming president. He called him a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. President Trump said, despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way. Also, Alveda King, who is a conservative, said, believe it or not, I remember Reverend Jackson's singing voice. He could rouse us with his singing voice. And Alveda King says, also, we did not necessarily agree politically with Jackson, but we could have lively conversations. He was an icon. On the left side of the aisle, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said Reverend Jackson was a voice for the voiceless and a source of hope in the fight for racial justice. Senator Warnock of Georgia said America has lost one of its great moral voices. Al Sharpton said, my mentor, Reverend Jesse Jackson, has passed. I just prayed with his family by phone. He was a consequential and transformative leader who changed this nation and the world. And Bernice King, who is not a conservative, said Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. devoted his life to lifting people in poverty, the marginalized, and those pushed to society's edges. He was a gifted negotiator and a courageous bridge builder, serving humanity by bringing calm into tense rooms and creating pathways where none existed. Now, obviously, Jesse Jackson was not a conservative. He was, I had to laugh when I read Bernice King's comment about a gifted negotiator. He was pretty good as a shakedown artist. Let's just be honest here. He caused a lot of consternation among corporate America. Maybe some of it was deserved, but here's the point I'd like to make in terms of how this relates to Kentucky and what we should say about Reverend Jackson's passing in light of what's happening here in Kentucky. Whatever your political bent, whatever side of the aisle you're on, the fact is that our public education system is still failing our minority students. Disproportionately, the fact is that low-income minority students, kids from low-income minority homes, are disproportionately more likely to be in a failing public school than any other demographic. And so in this discussion about racial justice, I think that's an issue that whether you're conservative or progressive or whatever you consider yourself, unless you're just an outright communist and don't care, and you want to see our system fail, I think it's time for Kentucky to realize that we are failing our low-income minority students. In some cases, only a single-digit percentage of that group of students are proficient in key academic areas, which means that very few of them are really prepared to be successful in a career, in college, in life in general. And yet we have people who are running our school system, who are on our school boards, who claim to be defenders of the downtrodden. They would claim to carry Reverend Jackson's mantle, I assure you. And yet they will oppose the very policies that are helping the very groups of people that he was most concerned about, those who were left behind, those who were being left behind, low-income minorities, poor minorities, who needed more opportunity, more chance. And yet these are the very same people who will oppose giving the opportunity for low-income minority kids to have a better education. And we see around the country with school choice efforts like charter schools, like scholarship tax credits, like other educational freedom opportunities. Who is it that's benefiting the most? It's these very people that the Reverend Jackson was concerned about, and that many people in our system claim they are concerned about. So I say that we, in the spirit of Reverend Jackson's passing, that our legislature needs to pass the school choice bill that would allow families in Kentucky to take advantage of a federal tax credit scholarship. And just because they don't have the money to send their kids to a better school, to a higher performing school, does not mean they should be denied, does not mean those children should be denied an education. And so this is a way that our legislature during the current session could honor the legacy and the goals of Reverend Jackson, and that is to provide more opportunities for a better education for poor minority students. What do you think about that? I'd like to hear from you. 502-571-0970. What are your thoughts about the passing of Reverend Jackson? He died this morning at the age of 84. Certainly was not a political conservative, but I think we can find some common ground here. He was, and especially when it comes to educational freedom, educational opportunity. The fact is that in many states in our nation, it has been low-income minority students who, and it's been those who have represented those communities. It's been the minority communities, I should say. It's been the leaders of the minority communities, those who would claim Reverend Jackson's mantle, who have led the effort, because they know that offering parents educational freedom, especially parents that don't have the means to send their children to a better school, they can't write a big tuition check, that this is a way that they can help their kids have a chance, a better chance in life. And I say it's time to do that in Kentucky. I'd like to hear what you think. 502-571-0970. We can't say we care about the most at-risk kids that we have in our system, especially in this city, especially in Jefferson County Public Schools, where they're claiming to have a $188 million deficit. They're closing schools, and they're not, but yet they're not moving in the direction of giving parents more options, and they're not being more accountable, and they're not being more transparent. And I think that the low-income minority communities need to continue to demand that, which they have in our state. They've continued to demand options and freedom, and they deserve it. And with the passing of Reverend Jackson, I think it's a great opportunity for the legislature to pass Representative T.J. Roberts' bill that would opt Kentucky into the federal tax credit scholarship of the One Big Beautiful Bill, despite what our governor calls it, and he calls it something else, but it is, of course, he's very much in the minority on that, because everybody knows it as the One Big Beautiful Bill. Well, let's dive in for a moment deeper into this story about our own Congressman Thomas Massie pressing the Department of Justice for more on the Epstein files. As a Kentucky conservative, let me say this: I am pleased to see Thomas Massie standing tall against the swamp, demanding full transparency in a system that's too often shrouded in secrecy and corruption. I'm not talking here about the election. I'm talking about this issue and what he's doing about this. And this isn't just about politics. This is about exposing evil. And the more we find out about what was going on with Epstein, the more evil it is, the greater that we see, the more evil that we see here. And seeking justice for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's heinous network, that's what this is about. And Congressman Massie, alongside Democrat Ro Khanna, have sponsored the Epstein Files Transparency Act, of course, last year, which sailed through Congress with overwhelming support and was signed into law. Now, I think probably maybe it had support from some quarters because they didn't really think this information would be released. Honestly, I think that's the case. But Congressman Massie is pressed to have this released. And now under Attorney General Pam Bondi, the DOJ has released millions of pages with heavy redactions that Massey calls improper and potentially protective of powerful figures. So from a common sense point of view, if there's nothing to hide, why these games? Why are these games going on? Massey has viewed unredacted versions, flagged at least 6 men's names that were blacked out, names of folks likely incriminated, including ties to billionaires like Les Wexner and even a higher up, a foreign official. Now, as Christians, we're reminded in Ephesians 5:11, and I wanted to say this today on this show, that we are to have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but we're rather to expose them. That's exactly what Thomas Massey is doing, calling this scandal, quote, bigger than Watergate, end quote, and criticizing the DOJ for pulling documents offline before lawmakers could fully review them. So we're going to continue to follow this story. Up next, we're going to talk about Governor Beshear and some of the comments he's been making, some analysis on that. Later in the show, Ryan Sparrow and his father and trainer, Kelvin Sparrow, from Radcliffe on with us to talk about his pro boxing debut.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
We'd like to hear from you today. What do you think about the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson today? He died this morning at age 84. He called for racial justice, and my take on that in terms of how we could remember his legacy, best honor his legacy, even if you didn't agree with him politically. But, you know, what about all the low-income minority kids and black kids in particular from black African-American demographics who are failing in our public schools? Very few are getting a stellar education in our public schools, especially in Kentucky. And my thought is that we could all come together and say we're going to offer parents of these kids options. A lot of times they may not have the funds. You know, if you're wealthy, you have school choice. You have options on your education, on your kids' education. You have all kinds of options. You can move to a different school district. You can write a check for private school tuition. But a lot of people can't do that in Kentucky, especially in our Jefferson County public schools. And one way to honor, I think, Reverend Jackson's legacy in a good way, in a positive way, productive way, is to give those parents of kids in the low-income minority communities more options when it comes to their children's education. I'd like to hear what you think about that, about the passing of Reverend Jackson. You can get a hold of us. Contact us on the Kentucky's Voice text line at 502-571-0970, and we'll try to get your comments on the air during this program. But I want to go back a few weeks to a rift that occurred between our governor, Democratic leftist governor, Andy Beshear, progressive, and Republican Congressman Brett Guthrie about the layoffs in Glendale as a result of Ford's decision to cancel its multi-billion-dollar partnership with South Korean battery manufacturer SK On in December. So this sudden decision by Ford occurred just 4 months after the first batteries had rolled off the line. 1,600 people left without jobs at this joint battery plant in Glendale. Now, many of the workers are blaming Ford and their misreading of the market. And in fact, Ford kind of admitted to that. And the market did not do, in terms of electric vehicles, what they expected it to do. They expected more people to buy electric vehicles. They expected the momentum to grow on that, and it simply hasn't done that. They misread the marketplace, and this happens. And private investors take these kinds of risks all the time. Now, Kentucky governor, though, Andy Beshear, didn't say anything about that. He instead is blaming the president, Donald Trump, and Congressman Brett Guthrie, who voted for the One Big Beautiful Bill, which contained President Trump's plan to get rid of these EV tax credits, and for good reason. But let's see some of the coverage of this, and I'll offer a couple thoughts after that.
Former Blue Oval SK employees are speaking out after the company laid off more than 1,600 people at the Glendale battery plant.
A Ford subsidiary will take over control as the plant shifts away from vehicle batteries. Now, the company says it will hire 2,100 workers to support the new plant. One former Blue Oval employee said the company's good pay convinced many people to move to Kentucky.
There's many of people that relocated and, moved from other states to come here. These companies around here didn't start upping their pay rate until Blue Oval came.
As part of the plant's unionization effort, he says Blue Oval fired him for unionizing. Blue Oval told us in a statement, quote, "There have been no findings of unfair labor practices," end quote. Kentucky politicians are also speaking about these layoffs. Last week, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear called out Congressman Brett Guthrie for supporting the One Big Beautiful bill that ended tax credits for EVs. WHAS 11 got Guthrie's response to Beshear's claims. Here's what they both said.
It's really disappointing that Brett Guthrie, who has 3 EV plants in his district, would be the one that champions it, pushes it through, and doesn't make any changes at all to protect those plants. So if we have people that lose their jobs or jobs that are not created, your own congressman did it to you, and that's really, really wrong.
It's just absurd what he said. I know that he's running for president, so he has to make those kind of comments because he has to satisfy a very liberal base if he wants to be the Democratic Party nominee for president. But I will tell you, mandating everybody buy an electric car is not what the American people want.
Guthrie went on to say Ford is just reacting to the lack of demand. And Ford agrees with that assessment, sending WHAS 11 a statement that reads, quote, "We have observed lower than anticipated industry-wide EV adoption rates due to changes in consumer sentiment, competitive dynamics, and legal and policy changes. Ford appreciates Chairman Guthrie's support for the American auto industry, and we look forward to our continued partnership with him and the state of Kentucky," end quote.
And so even Ford agreed with Congressman Guthrie that this was a misreading of the market. It was something that didn't work like they thought it was going to work. Now, I really feel I live in Hardin County, and everybody's talked about this, about what impact this will have on our economy there. Of course, housing is going to have an impact on that. It's going to have an impact on businesses there. Remains to be seen what that will be. Ford has talked about repurposing this plant so that it is an EV battery storage plant, which holds some promise. And they're talking about possibly ending up hiring 2,100 people. That hasn't happened yet, and it's going to be a while before it does. And it'll certainly be far less than the 5,000 workers that the company had promised the state that it would hire when they got these credits. But that brings me to one point I really want to make about this today. And this is a painful reminder, but and the economic development bureaucrats in Frankfurt don't really want to talk about this, and they don't want to go down too far down this road because for many reasons, but I will. And it's a painful reminder that government should not be in the business of determining which businesses are going to succeed and which are going to fail. Government is not equipped to make those decisions. Now, I'm not saying we don't need government. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we don't need government. I'm saying that that government needs to be limited in the role it plays, especially in these situations where it doesn't know enough about, for example, EV electric vehicles or the batteries that go in them. And in order to use taxpayer dollars to prop this project up, and instead starting an operation like this should be something that's done by the private sector. If the private sector won't do this, if private investors won't do this, if they don't believe the risk is worth it without taxpayers supporting it in some way, then why should taxpayers be left holding the bag when a project like this happens? Now, these credits were given and there were loans given. They're forgivable, but only if the plant achieves the employment and the wages, the level of wages that were promised as part of the granting of these tax credits and loans. It's about $250 million involved here. So the question then becomes, will legislators demand those dollars be returned? And I'm sure they're going to try to skip around this. They're going to try to work around it, and I get that. But even Ford understands that this is a market issue, a supply and demand issue. But my point is that Governor Beshear is bent on making this about Trump, even though, he talks all the time about we're not red or blue, we're Kentucky, we're Team Kentucky. And yet, at the same time, he's smack out of the other side of his mouth attacking Brett Guthrie, attacking Donald Trump, attacking the Republicans, attacking the legislature. But with fewer people buying EVs and other governmental policies relaxing fuel economy standards, Ford has acknowledged, quote, the operating reality has changed, which is why it scrapped its most ambitious and important EV projects. And there was going to be an attempt. I think had a different administration been in power, there was going to be an attempt to try to force the purchase of electric vehicles and to try to get rid of fossil fuel vehicles. There's going to be an attempt to force that on the American people. And like Congressman Guthrie said, he's absolutely right that the American people don't want that. Well, coming up, you don't want to miss this next segment, the rest of our show today with Kelvin Price Sparrow. Price has made his boxing debut, a successful one, and I can't wait to talk to these folks from Radcliffe. Stay with us right here. We are Kentucky's Voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. You're hearing this live on 970 WGTK and streaming live on social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook. And you can also watch us this afternoon on television, Channel 21 at 12:34 and 8. And you can see what a great-looking guy Dan is. Oh, no, sorry. It's not going to happen. If I could make that happen, I would. But yeah, we got a couple of great-looking guys here with us today, and great guys with us here on the show. And that is, we're joined today by a father and son team from Radcliffe, whose local gym, the Sparrow Boxing Club. I love that. I drove by there last night. There was all kinds of activity going on, and so great to have Coach Kelvin Sparrow, who's founder and head trainer of the Sparrow Boxing Club, and his son Price Sparrow, who has just made his pro boxing debut, and he's now on his way to fulfilling his dream of boxing in his hometown. He's trained under his father at Sparrow Boxing Club and is representing Kentucky on the professional stage. Gentlemen, it's a real honor to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jim, for having us. We appreciate it.
Well, let me ask you, take us back, Price, and Price, we'll start with you. Take us back to, well, I could ask either one. I guess let's start with Kelvin. That's fine. really, Price's story is about more than about boxing. This story is about community. It's about family. It's about what happens when people in the community decide to come together and invest in their kids, isn't it? I mean, I know that's important to you.
Yeah, it's very important because that's where it starts at. It starts it starts with support with our youth, with strong support from, parents and, other people that's in the community. It pretty much, heightens that percentage of those kids, becoming more successful in life. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it really does take a village, and we've said that, but it really does. And I think you're really the living embodiment of that. We'll talk about that maybe more in a moment. But Price, I want to get to you. Tell us about go back to when you were a kid, and when did you first say, I want to box. I want a boxing gym. I heard that story. You really wanted a place, and it turned out that your dad got a place and through the help of the community. But talk a little bit about your dream.
So I started boxing at 9. I was talking about it at 8, and then really started training at 9. I went to school. I got picked on a little bit because I was overweight, and that's what really made me want to be able to defend myself in case something hit the fan. So I was talking to my dad I really want to box. I kept asking him, kept telling him, and then one day, we passing the boxing gym. I'm asking him, and he like, all right, now if I take you here and you quit, it's not gonna be good. And since I just stayed in the gym, stayed training, and now we're here, 5-0, 3 knockouts.
Yeah. Well, so catch us up a little bit on what your fights have been so far and kind of you came up, I think you competed in amateur leagues, right, before you did the
Yes,
pro.
sir.
So tell us a little bit about your journey and maybe Kelvin can help out here. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you've won and what we should what you how you've gotten to this point, and then we'll talk about and tell us about your pro debut there too.
Okay. So the amateurs, I had over 120 fights, over 85 wins,
Mhm.
like 3, 4 national titles, 7, 8 regional titles, and like a good little bit of state titles. We had a lot of good accolades, but once we turned 18, we are like, it ain't nothing else to prove for real, for real. And I feel like we do better in the pros, and now we here. My first professional fight, it was amazing. It was in Louisville. We had a bunch of fans come out and see Roy Jones Jr. He was a part of it. He had a couple fighters on there. It was just an amazing experience.
Yeah. Well, Kelvin, every parent says that, when their kids want to do something, hey, if you don't stick with this, it's not going to be good. I think every parent, I know I've said that before, but when did you realize that your son really was serious about boxing? And then what kind of went through your mind? I know you told this story, and I was so glad to be invited to, I think it was birthday celebration that there not long ago, but to Price's birthday celebration, 19, by the way. And but but I heard you talking kind of about the story about needing a real gym as well. But when did all that happen for you?
Well, the day that he took it serious was that day he spoke of, and I told him, you know what I mean, if I allow you to do this, you better take it serious. So from that day on, the very first day he took it serious.
Mhm.
But when really things just started to recollect for us as a team was when we moved from Georgia. From Georgia, he started off in Georgia, and we moved due to my wife's military career at the time, and we moved here in 2016. And when we moved here, we was training out of my gym, out of my garage. So, that was a lot of pressure on Price, because he was a little small national guy at that time where he was competing with some of the bigger guys and bigger cities instead of just a little small county. We was competing with guys out of California, New York, Miami, Atlanta. So we was just training in my gym. And then, just one day I came back home from work and I see him sitting on the couch in there and, a little teared up. And I'm like, what's going on? And he said, I just want somebody to train with. And at that point, I set my sights on looking for a gym in Hardin County. And so I saw a building that was vacant, made the calls to, see how I can get things going in that direction. And I purchased the gym, you know what I mean? Had a few friends of mine to help me out, get it up to the stage of where it needed to be. And from that point on, we opened up Sparrow Boxing Club, which was one of the biggest grand openings with over 300 people to show up, to show support of what was coming to the community. And that's when the skill set of Price Sparrow rubbed off on the community, and now we got several other competitive boxers as well that have changed their lives, as well as those that's not seeking to compete, but just want to get the confidence to go off through life. And we just got a good embodiment of community supporters now.
Well, Price, let me ask you, what's it like to have your dad as a trainer and you be the fighter? How's that work?
It worked pretty good. It's amazing because times where I want to slack off, I can't because my dad right there everywhere I go. He's
Yeah.
there. So sometimes I want to be a kid and chill, but it's the goals we trying to reach. I don't got enough time to just chill and be ordinary. So my dad, he definitely makes sure I'm on my stuff and doing what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's good for me.
Well, let me ask Kelvin that. What's it like from your perspective to be involved like this? This has got to be. I know you're so proud of Price, but but give us a little bit about your approach to this. You talked a little bit about this at that event as well, about kind of how you're looking at this, and you definitely want what's best for him.
Yeah, the thing about it that a lot of people don't understand, you know what I mean, unless you got a kid that's on a level of being, sort of like a blue chip prospect or just one of the guys just to become a star, an athlete, So it's not what a lot of people think. It's actually hard. And what makes it hard is when you have a kid that's, at a certain standard, as an athlete, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, soccer, whatever, they life change immediately as a child. And the sacrifices they have to make is a lot of dances, a lot of school functions, a lot of birthdays.
And just hanging out, right? Just,
Yeah. It's one of the things where they sacrifice a lot. And me as a parent, sometimes it get to me, you know what I mean? It get to the I guess the mushy side of me to be like, man, my son ain't been an ordinary kid. You know what I mean? He ain't have the prestige of going out here to do what the normal little Toms and, you know what I mean, Ebony's of the world, Shayla's of the world, and Evelyn's to have fun as a child. And, his fun comes amongst shaping his skill set to be the best. And one thing I try to pride myself on and to remind my son of is, when you go out here and you putting all this hard work in as a child, when you get in your early 20s, we can play a little bit then. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because what people don't understand is when you sit here and sacrifice things as a kid, and then you start getting into adulthood and took things serious and then put yourself in a position, you can have all the fun in the world. And that's the way that I try to retool him to think. You know what I mean? What you missed was something you would have forgot anyway. But what you shape yourself for is something you'll remember for the rest of your life. Financial security, you into a career was, you know what I mean? You're doing something that you really want to do.
Yeah.
So for me as that parent, to answer your question full throttle, is it's a good thing. I like it, you know what I mean, to see that my son got a certain type of discipline to be able to navigate through life in all aspects. But it's also a little bit like, man, he lost a little small ordinariness as a kid. But at the end of the day, as long as the people that support us is appreciated with what he done did and what he accomplished and what he gonna go out to do, sometimes that's more, you know what I mean, blessing than, you know what I mean, we losing a bicycle ride.
Right. Well, this is an amazing story, and Price, that you're so willing to do this and make this sacrifice, I think says a lot to other young people, that it's okay to be committed to something, even when you're young, and it can pay big rewards later on. And so we got about a minute or so left in this segment. What's the difference in fighting an amateur and the pro fights? Give us a little bit of perspective on how that felt, how different that was.
It's a big difference, but it's all kind of the same. So in the amateurs, really fighting in the amateurs, it's more off of points and output. You don't even gotta land for real, but if you're doing more and just throwing more, you're gonna win, In the pros, it's more about the one shot that count, and it's more about just being more sharp and more defensive. And when you throw, make every punch count. Like you ain't fighting for points. You fighting to not leave it to the judges and the pros. You know, it's 8-ounce gloves, and if you slip up and get caught, another grown man hitting you with 8-ounce gloves that know how to punch it, it can be wrapped. So it's everything is more. You got to be more careful and just on point in the pros.
I want to talk a little more about that coming up. We're really delighted to have joining us today here on Kentucky's Voice, Price Sparrow, who's made his pro boxing debut, and his trainer and father, Kelvin Sparrow, from Ratcliffe, Kentucky. He has opened the Sparrow Boxing Club. We're going to talk more about what he's looking forward to in his career, and also with this boxing club, how folks can get involved. Stay with us here on Kentucky's Voice for our final segment coming up.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
We want to hear from you today. 502-571-0970 is our Kentucky's Voice text line. And by the way, you can catch us here each weekday, 11 to noon. And we're delighted today to have with us on the program a young man who has made his pro boxing debut, Price Sparrow, and his father and trainer, Kelvin Sparrow, with us today. And Price, before we went to the break, you know, you were talking kind of about the difference. We were talking about the difference in the amateur fight versus the pro match. And tell us a little bit about where you've now had one pro box. You made your debut, right? And so tell us where that was. Who was your opponent? You know, where did you fight? Tell us about the details of that.
So we fought downtown Louisville. Where was that at?
Gillespie.
The Gillespie, Louisville.
So that was right here in Louisville. Okay.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
My opponent, he was a tough 7-1 opponent.
Canadian.
He was Canadian. His name was Marco
Shazelli.
Shazelli. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but he was pretty tough.
Yeah. So is this is this the pro? Is there a pro boxing organization, or how do we identify this? What's the who?
So it's a professional. It was a professional boxing. So basically, what I did was I put the event on myself. So it was a independent. So I independently done it.
Yeah.
Now that was Price's first pro fight. So now he's at 5 pro fights, which he got his 6th pro fight coming up on March 7th in Arkansas.
In Arkansas,
so,
okay.
Now Price is signed with the top promoter in boxing, which is Top Rank Boxing, sort of like the Lakers of basketball. So right now he's being moved according to, you know, his status of being, you know, a highly decorated amateur, and look forward to being a superstar in boxing. So yeah.
That's awesome. So, so I guess when you set up a pro fight, you find you establish a pro. There are certain thresholds you have to meet to have it be a pro boxing match, right?
Yeah. So what we did was it's state protocols that has to be met.
Got it.
So we go through the state boxing commission, Kentucky Boxing Commission. I went through them. They was very delighted. Actually, the boxing commissioner here in Kentucky, Mr. Dave Franklin, he actually followed Price ever since he was an amateur. And actually, when we seen him at an event, and he thought Price was a professional then, and Price was only 16 years old. So from that point, Mr. Dave Franklin and I, we exchanged numbers, which he's the boxing commissioner. And he followed Price literally from that point on. Yep. And actually, we tagged on with the sports commission here as well, the Louisville Sports Commission. So they assisted a lot with putting together our event, helping us out, putting us in the right directions, connecting us with the news stations, radio stations, and hats off to the Louisville Sports Commission, because without those guys and without the help of Mr. Dave Franklin, Price pro debut in Louisville at the Gillespie wouldn't have never came to, you know, fruition.
Yeah, well, maybe we can make sure they get a copy of this interview as well. But hey, you know, I know when we were talking about and back, you know, we were talking about this, and at the event, I went and heard you all kind of laying out your story. But you know, Price, that opponent you had here in Louisville, I know you would have liked to have had a KO, but I remember your dad saying he just wasn't gonna. Some guys just aren't going to get knocked out. You know, they're just determined to stay on their feet.
Yeah. We was looking for the KO for sure.
Yeah.
We dropped them like 2 to 3 times, but they only counted one of them. So like One of the times I hit him, he hit the canvas, and then 2 other times I hit him, and then his glove hit the ground. That should be counted as a knockdown, but it wasn't.
It wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, we if we had 2 more rounds, he would have been out of there for sure.
That's so great. So let's talk about a minute. When I came to your party there, Price, you had a lot of your friends there. And I know we talked earlier about maybe some things you've missed out on or haven't done that most kids might do at your age, but you got a pretty good following, and you've got some people around you that I felt like were good for you, good friends. I mean, people that had your best interest at heart that were really pulling for you. How you talk a little bit about that? And obviously, even though maybe you haven't had time to go to all the dances and all the events, but you've certainly built some strong relationships there.
Yeah, yes, sir. We try to surround ourselves with good people, all the people that was there, pretty good, solid people. And the friends I had there, all of them, they keep me, on track, Like just say sometimes we go play basketball, they be like, Price, make sure you don't get hurt. Make sure you stretch before you hoop. Make sure,
Right.
They just keep me on track. So it's real good having friends and family like that really care about me.
And so and I think you already are to some extent. How seriously do you take the fact that you probably are already a role model to these younger kids that come to the gym and maybe see you there, hear your story? Do you feel a responsibility as a role model?
I do feel a responsibility because most of the kids that come in the gym and just know about me, they look up to me and they want to, whether they want to box or work as hard as I do and what they do, they look up to me. So I gotta, put my foot forward and continue to be a good role model for them. It's a little bit of pressure, but not too much.
Right, but and I think that's great, and I think it's really you're a great young man here. But we're talking with Price Sparrow, who's made his pro boxing debut right here in Louisville. Won his first fight against the Canadian fighter who was 7-1 coming into this match. And we're speaking also, just delighted to have his father and his trainer, Kelvin Sparrow, with us. And Kelvin, what about parents who say, I'm not sure about my kids getting into boxing? I don't know. Is it safe? Is it okay? Will they be okay? Talk a little bit about your thoughts about that.
My thoughts about boxing is it's probably the most disciplined sport that you can put your kids in when it comes to building their character, confidence, things of that nature. It's not what people think it is. I can't speak for other coaches, and I can't speak for if you take your kid across town here or do that, but I can speak of me and what I do at my gym. I'm a very fundamental mindset coach. I'm not driven to put a kid into competition. I'm driven to cater to whatever the kid's strengths are. And if it's not for them to be a boxer, it's not for them to be a boxer. If it's them just to come in here to lose weight or mentally get stronger by believing in themselves, by overcoming certain fears, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And boxing is just one of those type of sports to where, it get a bad look and a bad rap because, what's the target is someone just getting punched. You know what I mean? Whether it's in the body or in the head, And just honestly, you get more concussions in football than you do in boxing. And
Right.
football seems to be our country sport, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with boxing, it's just more so of, it makes a person become more attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my job, is to make a kid more focused on what can hurt you. And if I put a person in the mindset of preparing somebody to be pessimistic mindset, and I'm saying if I got the plan to save money for my water heater to go out, there's nothing wrong with that, which means I'm preparing for something bad to happen. So if you come in a boxing gym, my goal is to prepare you in case something bad happens. Mm-hmm. And nothing's wrong with that. And, to
Right.
teach you to be able to stand up for yourself or to protect yourself. And that's what we're driven to do.
Well, I think it's great. And, I guess I was going to ask Price that too. You mentioned as a kid, you were kind of picked on a little bit because you were a little overweight. What would you say to kids right now about maybe they're not going to be pro boxers, but this is a great opportunity, is it not, to really, get in shape and learn about life at the same time?
100%. I'll tell the kids whatever you do, whether it's boxing or not, just find you something you want to do and stick with it, no matter what. Like whatever you put your mind to, you can do. No matter how hard or tough it may seem, you put your mind to something, you can do it. So that's the advice I have for the kids or anybody out there. Period.
Well, let me ask you and your dad as well. Do you have some testimonies? I'm sure you've had some testimonies of young men, young women whose lives have been already affected by what you've done. Give us a little bit on that.
Well, I don't want to put names, you know what I mean, to the stories.
No names, yeah.
But we done basically had kids then come in there and without, the ADHD thing, and I'm not against it. I don't think that it's something that's not out there, but I'm the firm believer when bring them in there and let's go to work. So I done had kids to come in the gym where, on a straight frantic, I'm talking about can't even control nothing, to the standpoint of weeks on end, you wouldn't even realize who this kid is, you know what I mean? I done had parents, plural, that come up to me crying just how, it done changed their kid's life. I done had guys come in weighing 265, 70 pounds, want to lose weight and don't have no mindset to want to box, period. And they lost 40, 50 pounds, in the course of a couple, 3 months. You know what I mean? So it caters not just to kids, it caters to adults as well. So we have an age limit from 5 and up, and that up, it don't exceed to whatever that number may go, So we got military personnel that's in there, bourbon executives that come to the gym. We have all walks of life that come to the gym. And for all those people that come there, my goal, my thought process of them coming there is whatever problems you have coming in the door, leave them at the door. And when you walk out of this gym, jump over those problems or step on them, and please don't take them with you. So everybody that come to my gym, my goal, and hopefully it do touch everyone in this way to change their life in some sort of way, whether it's the outlook of life or it's something that just happened to you physically to give you a different mindset on how you need to, keep walking in life.
That's great. Just quickly, because I have one final question for Price, but how can folks, if they want to contact, what's the best way? We've got your number up there, 502-799-3162. Is that the best way for folks to contact you about maybe they want their kids? Yeah.
They could contact me that way, and they could contact me on Instagram at Price Sparrow.
Well, let me ask you this, Bryce. We've got just a few seconds left. Where do you see your career going, short term, long term? What are your specific goals? We don't have enough time, but take a shot at it.
Short term, I definitely want to, continue. I will continue to be undefeated. Definitely get to 10-0, 15-0, 20-0. Long term, I'm gonna be the best boxer to ever put on a pair of gloves. And we'll come back to this interview. We'll watch it, and then, realize I was telling the truth.
Very good. Well, Price Sparrow, Kelvin Sparrow, thank you guys. Congratulations on your win. Good luck on your career. We'll follow it. We'll have you on again. I hope you'll come back and be with us. God bless everyone. I hope you'll come back tomorrow at 11 o'clock right here on Kentucky's Voice.
All right.
Have a great day.